So nice to see so many new Dharma friends, and some friends that I have seen at Cambridge. Eileen, I'm looking at you. um, and I just really love the opportunity to share in a Dharma talk, especially with people that maybe I haven't met before, because then I can tell some of my favorite stories without worrying that everyone's already heard them all already. um, uh, so, I was thinking about the fact that the speaker series that you're having is really bringing attention to Kyolche time and tight practice. So I thought I would talk a little bit about some of my experiences with retreat and and encourage folks. I'm encouraged by hearing art Kyolche that you're doing, and I'm sure there's some of you have signed up for extra practice and would like to also encourage folks, if they haven't made an opportunity or haven't had an opportunity to sit a longer period, to really see if you can make some space for it in your life. It's quite a gift. And for me, and all the experiences that I've had with practice, sometimes I start thinking, I don't have time to do this. like Zen Master Bon Soeng said, um, I have two kids who are teenagers now, and I have a job that's pretty demanding, and I'm spending a lot of time in the Zen Center, and um, I have other family demands, and I just can't get away because I just have so much time and I'm so stressed. And then I make the time and I do it, and I come back and I realize, wow, I really didn't have the time not to take a break from that crazy mind habit and just see what's going on up here against this very calm background. And it's just such a wonderful gift. Um, so, um, so most recently, I was able to sit 7 days this past December at the Providence Zen Center with Bobby Rhodes has a retreat there every December, and I being so close to the Providence Zen Center, I've tried to do that as often as possible, and it was really a wonderful experience to do that separating that I talked about, and to feel like, well, my kids are 13 and 18. The first time, when I was younger, when I first started practicing, like Jeff had said, I was in my 20s, and I could just leave my job, and I didn't have any kids, and didn't have many responsibilities, and I would just go and sit a week every year. And when I was a couple of years into that, I was able to sit a 90-day retreat, and it was so simple, and I didn't know how simple it was at that time. And then the first time after my kids were around that I went back to practice, I had a 4-year-old. And then I couldn't do a week for a long time until there was Camp Grandma. So both kids went to Camp Grandma and Grandpa for a week. And this was the first time um, my kids stayed by themselves while I was gone. So it was quite a leap of faith for everybody. But it's so interesting to me, that process of trusting the practice and really trusting don't know. Knowing that, some part in my center knew that this was important for everybody. I knew that I needed some time to go deep into practice and to, return to the center and just, really engage with that rest mind, and that they could do it. I knew that they could do it. and yet you don't know until you do it. So, um, uh, I don't know where I'm going with this except to say that um, I'm sitting here in the house that didn't burn down while I was gone, with two children who were able to cook for themselves and get to work and get to school. And so I guess all of that is to say, um, I just so appreciate that I can trust that not knowing and just take that leap, which is really what all of our practice is about, is um, uh, connecting with our don't know mind and trusting that, and working towards keeping our center strong, and really just paying attention, not getting stuck in this habit mind and this evaluation and, that this piling on of the rights and the wrongs, but just seeing, what's in front of you and what's your job in doing it. And I remember the, the, the first time when I very first started practicing, and was connecting with, um, paying attention and very much connected to life and this idea of life and death. It was an idea, right, for me in my 20s, right, because I'm going to live forever. And then my grandmother died, and I've been practicing maybe for, I don't know, maybe about 6 months. And I remember going to the family, um, the hometown, and going to the funeral, and the ministers, it's a Protestant church, giving a talk and reading from the book and talking about my grandmother's life. And I was just completely transfixed. And I remember after the service was over, he came right up to me and said, I really noticed how much you were paying attention. And it was a big hit for me, because, I knew that I really was paying attention, because here I had been doing this practice, and now there's this real life and death moment. And this is, um, like where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. I was listening to a Dharma talk a little while ago, and they were telling a story about a long time ago Zen master who uh, was said something to the emperor that made him very upset, and so he was condemned to death. And the day comes for him to be executed, and he's sitting in the cell, and they come to get him, and he's just talking to the people and very normal, like every other day. And the person who was giving the talk was saying how that's where the rubber hits the road when you're talking about non-attachment to life and death. On the day that that you are going to go, um, each moment is just like this. And for me, that time in this funeral, it was just like that for me. I was so zeroed in, and then to see that somebody else was perceiving that was a big hit for me. And then to approach, my grandmother, um, seeing who I knew as my grandmother, but something wasn't there, and it just had this huge hit for me of like, what is that? What is it that's not there anymore? Um, but again, I was in my 20s, so as much as I love my grandmother, it was not me, right? This is, she's in her 80s. That's to be expected. And and then this year, or about actually a year and a half ago, my father passed away. And here now, fast forward 30 years, I've been spending all this time, all these retreats, practicing about not attaching, and moment by moment, each thing is complete. Everything's always changing. And, then I got this really huge hit because, my father and I were very close, and he was such a dynamic person. And I guess as much as we all know, we all have this connection to the concept of life and death, and we all understand that it's not going to last forever. Um, uh, when, when it happens to somebody in your circle, it's not an idea anymore, and it's a really big hit. And for me, digesting that change in my relationship with my father I feel like was so much more possible because I had had all this time to just really practice with that, and seeing, all my family members, how they were trying to make sense of this. I had never felt more grateful for all of my time of practice because I could just embrace each step in the process. And my father, who, I don't think he knew this, but I think he probably was a Zen master in a past life. We're having the meetings with the people from hospice, and they're talking about the different things that you might expect, and sort of not talking too much about a time frame. And all throughout it, my father's like, well, he kept saying they haven't found a way to reverse the process. And it was kind of like, ha ha ha. And then at a certain point there, I asked, well, how much time are we really talking about here? Months or weeks? And the person who was there said, maybe. And my father said, oh. And I said, oh. And it just connected, of there are no guarantees. And I think because through our practice, we all sit with that. When the moments that seem bigger come, you can still move through them like a moment, but really be there and really experience that so you don't miss something, right? I feel like that is one of the biggest gifts of practice, is hard things to go through. When you practice seeing each moment arise with the breath, and pass away with the breath, out breath, that each moment that you practice through that, and through sitting in retreat when your body's aching and a lot of difficult feelings are coming up, and you're having memories of 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 things that happened, and you're having flashes of hopes for the future, and moment by moment just keep coming back to breathing in your center, seeing those things come and letting them go, that in your life you can do that, and you can embrace it and not miss it, and not try to shut it out. I feel like that is one of the huge gifts of our practice. I had intended to talk about retreat, but apparently I'm talking about my father. So surprise ending. But I mean, it's all connected, and just wanted to just share that reflection with everyone, and that really deep experience that I had, and feeling so grateful that practice helped me have it. 100%, so that I didn't feel like I had to shut down or block out those difficult feelings. I could really embrace each moment, which is such a gift. So um, I had some other stories I wanted to tell about practice, but what I really want to say is one of the things that typically happens um, in the December retreats at PZC that I talked about with Bobby Rhodes is at some point in the week, someone will read the English translation of the morning bell chant. And this week was no different. So, if you haven't had a chance to do that, and it seems like you have the chanting book online, is that, Marshall, is it on the website, the whole chanting book? Yeah, is that it's a really interesting opportunity if you can take a moment to read those English translations. And there's this one phrase that stuck out for me this time that I wanted to read to everybody. Um, um, Holding beads, perceiving the universe with emptiness as the string, there's nothing unconnected. Such a wonderful phrase. And when we're sitting for 25 minutes like we did, you can sort of rest the events of your day. You can let your body settle down and maybe let the experiences of the past day settle. And then when you can sit, say a long sitting, right? So you say you're sitting 3 or 4 half-hour sittings, you can start to sort of digest and sink into maybe what happened for the week. And when you can have an opportunity to sit for a couple days or 5 days or 7 days, more and more you can settle down and really allow some of these wonderful teachings to sort of bubble up and sit with this perceiving the universe with emptiness as the string. There's nothing unconnected. That is a big hit. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all. And I wanted to end with one story of my experience with sitting Kyolche and how your thinking can appear for you. So I was able to go to Korea to sit. Must have been, I think, 1995, 1996. And when the retreat there happens, it goes on the lunar calendar. So the retreat actually started in mid-December, I think. And this was typically the time, well, I don't want to give away the ending. So we get there mid-December, we start the retreat, we're waking up at like 4, I think there was 3:30 in the morning, and starting and sitting all day and going to bed, I think at 9:30. And so getting into the routine was a challenge. So we're getting into the routine, and then about a week into the retreat, I would get up for morning practice. I would sit down and I would start thinking, oh, well, what am I going to get for my mom after the retreat? Because I have to get something for her. And then I got to get something for my dad and my sister. And what else? Who else do I have to get something for after the retreat? And so my mind started going like that, thinking of all the people I had to get things for, thinking what I was going to get for them when the retreat was over. And it just kept going and going and going. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I started to think I was a little kooky. It went on for like 3 days. It just got stuck. And at a certain point, I realized every December, my whole life so far, I make a list of people I'm going to get gifts for, and I figure out what I'm going to get for them, because here comes Christmas. And here I am, all the way halfway around the world, completely separated from any sign of Santa. And my mind habit is completely operating the way it always has. And that was a huge hit for me, of how your habit mind operates. And this is happening for all of us all the time. And sitting a retreat, that starts to bubble up, and you can let it go, so that it's not in the back of your mind controlling you. And for all I know, I don't know you all, probably many of you folks have sat many long retreats or some long retreats. So I'm probably not telling you something you don't already know, but that was my experience, and it was really a big hit for me, and a really good reminder of how amazing that experience of longer sitting, how much you can digest and sort of free yourself from that habit, so that in each moment you can be more clear with exactly what's happening right then, and not getting controlled by all of these habits that you have. So with that, I'm looking at the clock. I'm going to stop, and thank you all for your attention, and thank you all for your practice, and encourage you to ask questions of our teacher. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your talk and for your reminder about the depth of practice. And I just want to comment on a couple of things that you said, and then leave some time for questions. Really, just as you were talking about your Kyoto experience, you said something that is so simple and so obvious. You sat down and you began to think. We all do that. But how much do we have the awareness of that process? And your talk showed so well how that simple thing leads to these mind habits, and how these mind habits shape our character, and how our character shapes our behavior, and how we get frozen in a way as a person, a personality. Oh, I do things this way. Oh, I'm not like that. All of these ways that, if you watch the process, and the beauty of our practice and these longer retreats especially, is you get to witness the process of how that forms. Oh yeah, I've been writing lists to give people gifts for Christmas for my whole life. And as I'm saying that, I'm realizing I grew up in a Jewish family. We didn't give Christmas gifts. So that wouldn't even enter into my consciousness. And so much of how our consciousness forms, we think is right and wrong. But it's habit, it's formation. Every individual has their own mind habit. Each of us, I'm going to butcher a little bit what Jennifer said, but each of us is one of these beads. And each of us thinks there's a particular way we're supposed to be. But for me, it's so beautiful to watch somebody do something completely differently than I would do it. And then to see, wow, that created something that I never would have imagined. And those small things help to widen our perspective. And in so many ways, I think our practice is about deconstructing those mind habits so we can find some freedom. We always say Zen and Buddhism is about liberation. Liberation from what? We're born into conditions We live through those conditions. And as Jennifer pointed out, we die out of those conditions. Along the way, how tight is our mind? How much do we limit ourselves? So much of these long retreats are about seeing our limits and actually pushing past them. And the freedom that arises out of recognizing that what we think are our limits are arbitrary. We can do more if we really engage. When the rubber meets the road, that's our life. Everything else is commentary. You know, when I was a kid, there was a TV commercial. They'd sing that phrase, when the rubber meets the road. It was for a tire, from a tire company. But our practice orients us back to this moment. When the rubber hits the road, we're alive. Everything else is dream. Everything else is commentary. Everything else is about what we remember or what we hope for. But that moment where the rubber meets the road, we're alive. And if our practice is about nothing else, it's about really being alive. And unless we investigate these mind habits, until we really look closely at them and see that they're not as solid as we think they are, that these walls that we create are actually open. There's room for energy and for air to come and go. So maybe I'll stop with just one short little story that Jennifer reminded me of. I have a niece who's now 36 or 37 years old. Back when she was about 9 years old, I was visiting her family, and we were talking about Buddhist practice and what I was doing. And she must have been listening, because from I don't know where she was, in another room or somewhere at the table, we weren't paying much attention to her. She said, "Oh, everything is attached. Nothing is separate." We all can see it. We all get it if you really pay attention. But can we live it? Can we live it for ourselves? And can we give each other the freedom to really be alive in our own particularity, not having to conform to somebody else's idea of right and wrong? But in a sense, it's our human right to find our own way. And it's curious, in a practice where we get restricted in our behavior within the form during retreat, the point isn't about conformity. The point is about finding our nature and finding a way to express that in the world. So thank you very much, Jenna, for expressing your nature and allowing us to hear it in a way that maybe we haven't heard it before.